Good afternoon, and welcome to the monthly webinar from the Bureau of Business Research. This October webinar will cover an introduction to a weekly leading indicator that we'll be producing here at the Bureau of Business Research for the state of Nebraska. My name is Eric Thompson. I'm a faculty member here in the Department of Economics at UNL and also director of the Bureau of Business Research. So I'll be taking you through I'm the person that will be producing the weekly leading indicator, and I'll be taking you through that process here today through a PowerPoint presentation. A few other things to point out. We'll have several poll questions during the PowerPoint presentation where we'll ask the audience participants to state their opinion on a subject, so look for those. I'll also point out that you can ask questions. We will be answering questions at the end after the PowerPoint has been presented. So you can ask a question at any point. We have a question window where you can type out your question. So you can type them out as they occur to you, or you can wait till the webinar is over and type in the question then. Either would work just fine. I guess like all Zoom meetings, we also have a chat room, and I'll just say that I'd be happy if the participants in the webinar, the audience of the webinar, if they want to start some side conversations in the chat room, that's okay with me. So feel free to utilize the chat room as well as the webinar proceeds. So with those points made, I'm going to go ahead and present our webinar on our new weekly leading economic indicator. Now, I should say that the purpose of the weekly leading economic indicator really is to get information out a little more quickly about the Nebraska economy. So our leading indicator contains 6 components, 6 variables that we track to produce the leading indicator. That information is usually not entirely available until late the next month. So for example, next Wednesday we'll be releasing the monthly leading economic indicator based on September data. So it's still pretty timely, but a little bit of time has passed since September. So with our weekly leading indicator, what our goal is to release the information for the leading indicator that becomes available early in the month earlier, so you don't have to wait all the way to the end of the month. So we'll be releasing sort of a preliminary and partial value for the leading indicator in the 2nd, 3rd, and sometimes 4th week of the month on a Monday, or perhaps Tuesday if it takes a little longer. And that weekly information will give you an early snapshot of what the final monthly leading economic indicator that comes out at the end of the month is expected to look like. So that's our goal here, is to get among the 6 components of the leading indicator, to get the results out for the variables as they become available, rather than waiting for all of them to release at the end of the month. So by way of outline for the webinar today, we'll review what those 6 components of the monthly leading indicator are. We'll talk about when each of those 6 components becomes available. We'll talk about the preliminary and partial values for the LEI-N, the leading indicator for Nebraska, that we'll be able to release each week of the month. And then we'll give you an idea of the types of information we'll be providing those weeks. There are 6 LEI-N components. Now, to be a component of the leading economic indicator, a data series or a variable has to have 2 features. It has to be timely and it has to be predictive. So it needs to, taking the second feature first, it needs to be able to predict economic activity 6 months in the future, but it also has to be timely. In other words, you need to be able to get the data for a month either right at the end of that month or sometime within the next month. Variables that have both those characteristics, being timely and predictive, are included in our leading economic indicator. Now, before we get started on talking about those 6 components, we're gonna ask our first poll question. So you can either if you're familiar with the leading indicator, you may know the answer to this question, or even if the leading indicator is new to you, intuition may tell you what the correct answer is. So here's the question. Which of the following are components of the leading economic indicator in Nebraska? In other words, which of the three variables listed do we include in our leading indicator? So first variable, exports from Nebraska businesses. Second variable, airline passenger counts in Nebraska. Third variable, stock values of leading Nebraska companies. So which of those three, A, B, or C, is included in our leading indicator? That is the poll question. We'll give you the answer in a moment. Go ahead and vote in the meantime. Okay, let's get started. So here you see the three of the leading indicators for components of the leading indicator for Nebraska. One is building permits for single-family homes. So cities around Nebraska will release counts of building permits for single-family homes and actually for other types of building permits shortly after a month ends. Not every city does that, but many of them do. And so you can get building permits for single-family homes on a very timely basis in Nebraska. With a little bit of a lag, the federal government also consolidates and puts out a report on total building permits for the state. So that some of our older data comes from that source, and again, the reports from the Nebraska cities provide us timely information that's just a few weeks. Comes out just a week or two after a month ends. And obviously, building permits, in addition to being timely, are predictive. The permits that are asked for most often result in construction just a few months down the road. Another leading indicator is weekly manufacturing hours worked. That variable is timely. It's released 3 or 4 weeks after a month ends from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And since manufacturing is one of the most pro-cyclical parts of the economy, it's been found through testing that manufacturing hours works predicts economic activity down the road. So an expanding manufacturing hours worked predicts that the economy will be growing in 6 months, and a contracting one suggests the economy will slow down. Finally, the value of the U.S. dollar comes out very quickly after a month ends and is very predictive in our export-oriented state. Certainly affects industries such as agriculture and manufacturing. So that's 3 of our 6 components. Okay, well, let's have a look at the poll results, see what people chose. And I see that the most common answer is exports from Nebraska businesses. The least common is airline passenger counts. And the last one is stocks of leading Nebraska companies was also a common answer. Well, on this particular poll question, actually the result that was not chosen is actually what the one that we include. So airline passenger counts are the 4th component of our leading economic indicator. It's also available in a timely manner. Usually 3 to 4 weeks after a month ends. Major airports of the state will be releasing their passenger counts. It's also very predictive. We've tested this statistically and just logically. If businesses are expecting to have a strong economy with lots of demand, they're going to be scheduling business trips to go out and try to win that demand, or bringing suppliers in to ramp up their supply chain. Similarly, if people feel secure about their job 6 months in the future, they're more likely to be willing to spend money on plane tickets to go on vacation and things like that. So both personal and business travel is found to lead growth in the economy. So that's why we include it. Now, why don't we include the other 2 options? Well, it turns out that data on the exports from Nebraska businesses, while it would be very predictive, is not very timely. So we can't include that because it's timely. In terms of the stock value of major Nebraska companies, we thought that would be predictive, but our testing, and it's certainly timely, available each day, but we didn't find, when we tested statistically, that the value of stocks of leading Nebraska companies actually led growth in the Nebraska economy. So we certainly considered including that, but it didn't qualify. Okay, what are our 2 last components of the leading indicator? Well, one is initial claims for unemployment insurance. So obviously companies, that information is available in a very timely manner. It's released on a weekly basis by the first or second week of a month. It would be available for a month within the first week or two of the next month. So it's very timely. And testing and logic suggest it would be a leading indicator as well. Firms that are expecting demand to be strong are going to hold on to their labor, are very unlikely to be laying off workers. In fact, we're seeing that right now in the Nebraska economy. Now that labor is scarce, initial claims in Nebraska and around the country have been falling rapidly. Finally, business expectations. We do a monthly survey of Nebraska businesses, 500 businesses. Not everyone responds, but we capture the data from the respondents. And we literally ask them, what are your plans for increasing sales and employment over the next 6 months? So that's where we get data on business expectations. So those are our 6 components. Now, this information comes out at different times of the month. And our goal we're going to continue to have a monthly leading indicator report and a final value for the monthly leading indicator that'll come out either the last or second last week of the year, of each month on a Wednesday. But we're planning to release on Mondays earlier in the month a weekly leading economic indicator where we present the data from the 6 components that's already available. So what is the timing of this data? Okay, before we get into that in detail, here's our second poll question. Which is the LEI-N component that is one of the last to be released each month? Is it business expectations, manufacturing hours worked, or building permits for single-family homes? I think in my earlier explanation, I might have given away a few hints on this one if you were listening real carefully. But go ahead and vote on that, and let's see what people say. We'll reveal the answer a little bit. All right, so when are the 6 component values available? Well, as I've said, all 6 components are available and published by the last Wednesday of the next month, sometimes the second last Wednesday. So just for example, the September LEI-N will not be available until near the end of October, in fact, by next Wednesday. So that's when all 6 will be available. Now, like I've said earlier in this webinar, it's a little frustrating because I know that many components of the LEI-N are actually available right at the beginning of the month or shortly after the previous month ends. In fact, 3 of the components are available by the second week of the month, which is what we're calling the first full week of a month. So week 1 is whatever week that the first day of the month falls on a business day. So the first day of the month could be a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. And then the next week is the second week. So the second week, the Monday of the second week could be the 4th in the case of some months, or as late as the 8th. So we can give a partial and preliminary value of the leading indicator based on 3 of the 6 components, half of them. And in fact, some of these are components that have a relatively large weight in the leading indicator. So a significant share of the leading indicator actually can be released by the second Monday of the second week of the month. Again, typically the 4th to the 8th of a month. So we could have released a weekly leading indicator between the 4th or 8th of October, for example, that covered the month of September, a preliminary value, based on these 3 components. Business expectations, our survey is typically done, and those letters come in the mail early the next month, within the first few days. Value of the US dollar, initial claims for unemployment insurance are available very quickly after a month ends. So during the Monday of the second week, we'll be releasing our first preliminary and partial leading indicator. Okay, before going on, let's have a look at the second set of poll results. So it's basically a tie. So evenly divided between business expectations, manufacturing hours worked, and building permits for single-family homes. Among those 3, it's actually manufacturing hours worked that comes out the latest. So we're dependent on the state results from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So these are the the state employment reports that are companions to the national employment reports that famously come out the first Friday of every month. It takes a few more weeks for them to compile the data at the state level. And so that's actually one of the last reports that we get. Usually the second last Friday of each month. Okay, so when are the remaining 3 components available? Well, during the 3rd week, obviously we'll already have the Monday of the 3rd week. We'll have all the components we released in the 2nd week. There might be a little bit more information on initial claims for unemployment insurance, maybe a few straggler surveys coming in, but we'll have those same 3 components. Plus, we'll start to have nearly complete information from the cities that provide it on building permits for single-family homes. So we'll be able to add building permits for single-family homes by Monday of week 3. Now, week 4, it kind of depends, again, on the, whether the first Monday is, the first Friday of the month is on the 1st or on the 5th. It depends on a variety of factors. Basically, manufacturing's hours worked, airline passenger counts sometimes come out and are available the Friday of the 3rd week. Sometimes they're available the Friday of the 4th week. So that's why I have in some cases written here. When they're available the Friday of the 3rd week, then we're able to get our last 2 components of the leading indicator, manufacturing hours worked and airline passenger counts, and we're able to produce our full leading economic indicator report write-up. We're able to release it to the press, and we'll be able to do that by Wednesday of the 4th week. We'll also probably have a little bit more information on building permits for single-family homes. However, if that data doesn't come out till the end of the 4th week, then we'll have to release it in the 5th week, and that's what I'm going to show next. In some cases, it's about half and half during the different months of the year. It'll be Wednesday of the 5th week when we finally have the data on manufacturing hours worked, airline passenger counts, and we're able to produce our full report and write-up and release it to the media and the public on Wednesday. So each month we'll either have 2 or 3 weekly leading economic indicator reports that are partial and preliminary estimates of the final leading indicator value that we'll get either the last Friday or the second last Friday of the month. So for example, Monday of the 2nd week, we'll have preliminary and partial LEI-N values based on those first 3 components: business expectations, the value of the US dollar, and initial claims for unemployment insurance. By the Monday of the 3rd week, we'll be able to add a 4th component: building permits for single-family homes. And then in some months, on Wednesday of the 4th week, we'll release another weekly value based on those 4 components, but we should have a little bit more information on building permits for single-family homes. So it'll represent something of an update. Or on Wednesday, we'll have all 6 components. We'll receive all 6 components and be able to release the final leading indicator. Other months, about half the time, it won't be until Wednesday of the 5th week that the full LEI-N will be released. So this is the schedule that we will be able to follow. So again, 2 to 3 preliminary weekly values for the leading economic indicator earlier in the month based on partial information. Okay, so what will we be providing in those 2 to 3 weeks? Well, as I've said, we'll give you a preliminary and partial value of the LEI-N from the previous month. So if it's October now, during the Mondays in October, we'll give you a preliminary and partial values for September's leading indicator. And now next Wednesday, in this month, it'll be next Wednesday, the last Wednesday of the month, that we'll be able to release the final value of the leading economic indicator for September. And while we're doing each one of those weekly releases, we'll also give you information, more detailed information from the business survey that we conducted in September. As I said earlier, we conduct a survey of 500 Nebraska businesses each month. We'll be able to give you the value of what's called the Business Confidence Index in Nebraska, how confident a business is about expanding their sales and employment, as well as the 5 top concerns of businesses in the previous month. So that information will be available starting the Monday of the second week. So September information from the business survey will be available the Monday of the second week of October, and so forth. Okay, so we're going to give you an example of the information that we actually released or put on our website Monday of this week. So it's Friday now. On Monday, this information was put on our website. And September, not the 21st of September, that stands for September 2021 values of the leading economic indicator. Again, it was based on 4 components. We did not yet have the manufacturing hours worked or the airline passenger counts. So I'm going to show you what we posted online, but if you want to go to the website, there's a web address for the Bureau, bbr.unl.edu. If you scroll down that front page a bit, you will see these same figures. You can also download this real-time data on the Nebraska economy each week if you like. Okay, so here's what we would have presented. You see here the monthly change in the leading economic indicator for the previous 5 months, plus our preliminary value for September based on 4 of the 6 index components. What you can see is that the leading indicator was rising sharply earlier in the year, but the rate of growth has slowed here in the third quarter, July, August, and September of 2021. So our preliminary and partial results for the leading indicator in September is certainly very consistent with that. Depending on how airline passenger counts and weekly manufacturing hours worked come in, we're likely to have either a small increase or a small decrease in the value of the leading indicator. Right now, based on the first 4 components, it's down just 0.08%. So that's what you'll be able to see. You'll get a preliminary and partial prediction for the LEI-N, plus you'll be able to put it in the context of how the LEI-N changed in the previous 5 months. You also, as I said, get some interesting information from the business survey. So the September survey of Nebraska business, among the responding businesses, they were fairly confident. Significantly more businesses reported plans to expand sales and employment over the next 6 months than reported plans to reduce them. So a neutral value here is 100. A really strong value would be something like 120 for Business Confidence Index. We're seeing a very solid positive value right around 110. And notably, that solid value is both reflected in both recent conditions, recent growth in sales and employment, and expectations over the next 6 months. So it's solid in the sense of 110 is a good solid number for business confidence, but also the consistency of it, both the recent past and the near future. Lastly, what are businesses concerned about? Probably no surprise here. Now, we've been doing this survey for 10 years. Nearly every month for 10 years, the most common answers when we ask businesses, what's your top concern, were related to customer demand. So the price of commodities is low, or we can't get enough customers in the door, or if it's a healthcare provider, they're complaining about insurance reimbursement rates, things like that. So it's typically a customer demand issue is the most important or the most frequent thing that businesses list when you ask them what their top concern is. But this more recent period, things have changed. Labor availability concerns, challenges with the supply chain. And so we see a different result in September. And there's really 4 most common answers. One of them is COVID-19, although I note that talking about COVID-19 and how it's affecting their business was not the most common answer. So some movement away from COVID-19, which obviously over the last year or so has been the leading answer in many months. The most common answer is concerns about the availability of labor and the quality of labor. So that's labor labor shortage, as some people are calling it. We do have customer demand in there at 22%, and then not far behind is the cost of availability of goods and services. So that's almost the leading issue as well. In a typical month, in a different year where the supply chain wasn't such a concern, cost and availability of goods and services would be maybe 4, 5, or 6% of businesses saying that's the most important issue. So that really is elevated right now. And labor availability and quality are higher than they would normally be. And government regulation is the fifth issue. So you'll be able to track these responses over time. Will cost and availability of goods and services rise to be the most important issue if the supply chain situation worsens? What's going to happen with labor availability? Will there be any relief there? Will more people be rejoining the workforce? You can track that early in the month by looking at our weekly leading indicator reports. Okay, so that was the main presentation I had to give today. I'm going to look to answer questions here in a moment. I will let you know about and encourage you to participate in our next month webinar, which will occur on November 12th and be led by my colleague Mitch Harrion. And it'll also deal with the issue of labor availability and quality. We're going to look at the talent availability dashboard, where we present information about labor availability, displaced workers in the greater Omaha area, presenting some research that's sponsored by the Greater Omaha Chamber. So that'll be November 12th. Obviously, even if you don't live in Omaha, it's a very large part of our state's economy. And this is an opportunity to see how the labor market is evolving in the greater Omaha area. Okay, well, let me go ahead and answer those questions, and I'll also remind you there's many ways to follow the Bureau through social media, and you can even get on our email newsletter website by emailing your preferred email address to bbr@unl.edu. So what is the first question? I can see it there. I'm having a little trouble reading it. There are no open questions at the moment. Okay. Well, I'll give people a minute to add. Oh, okay, I see one there. Can you show the trend from previous months to now, please? On was that on like the leading issue? I did have that available here for the LEI-N. Unfortunately, not for these two. I'm sorry, I don't have those two available. But if you were to send me an email, or actually you can find the trend. Well, I take that back. You'd have to send me an email because we haven't been publishing the business confidence index results in recent months. We basically have transitioned from having a standalone report on business confidence to including that information as part of our weekly leading indicator reports. Is there another question? Okay, there don't seem to be any other questions. Well, of course, I always tell the students if we finish a little early, that's okay to finish early. We got through the material we wanted to cover. I want to thank everyone again for attending our webinar today, and look forward to seeing you next month on the 12th and in our future webinar series. Thanks again.